Hello guys, once again welcome back to another Android app development tutorial. In this video, here I am going to show you how to display a chart in your Android application. So here is an example of chart. So this is an example of bar chart. So here the x-axis represents year and y-axis represents growth rate of an organization. So here is the legend. So here each color bars represents growth rate in each year. So this is an example of a bar chart. Now I will show you another example. So here is another example. So this is an example of a pie chart. Here also the same data. So here each colors represents years and growth rate is also specified on each color, and here is the legend. So here each color represents year, and here is the description of this chart. Okay, so this is an example of a pie chart. So now I'm going to demonstrate how to display these two charts, that means bar chart and pie chart, using a library called MPAndroidChart. So for this application we need some data. So in this example we need two data. We need year and corresponding growth rate. So here I save all this information in a web server. Here I am going to using my local host as web server. So here I have a WAM server application. It is already running. I already create the needed database in WAM server. So go to localhost, login into PHP myadmin. So here we have a database called the growth DB. That database contains a table called the growth info. So here we have a table contain three columns: ID, year and growth rate. So here we have some year and here we have some growth rate in each year. So now I already placed a PHP script inside the WAM server root folder. So inside the root folder of WAM server, I create a folder called growth info. In that folder, I create another folder called scripts that contain a PHP script that returns some JSON data. I will show you the content of this PHP script. So these are the credentials for the web server. We have host name, username, password and database name. We establish connection to the database using this function called the MySQLi connect and pass all the needed credentials. And if the connection is success, so this is the SQL query for retrieve all the information from the table. Here we execute that SQL query by using this function called the MySQLi query. Here a response is an array. Now we have to fetch information from each row. For that, here I use a while loop. We fetch each row by using this function called MySQLi fetch assoc, and we save each row into this variable called row. And finally we save the row in the form of a name value pair into the array called response by using this function called array push. Then we make the JSON, we perform the JSON encode on that particular array and return back the result. And finally we close the connection to the database. So this is the PHP script available on server for returning a JSON data. So now we can test this. So now I am going to run that PHP script available on my web server. Here is the path. So this is the response from the PHP script. So this is a JSON array that contains a number of JSON objects. So each JSON object has three property: ID, year and growth rate. So now we are going to display this information in the form of a chart in our Android application by using a third-party library called MPAndroidChart. Create a new Android Studio project. Specify the application name. So now the project is created. So first here I am going to add the internet permission for the application. So this application fetch information from a server. So we need the internet permission. So open Android manifest.xml and add the internet permission. Okay, so now we can specify the dependencies needed for this project. So in this project I'm going to use retrofit for the network transactions. So first we need to add the dependencies for using retrofit. So these are the dependencies for using retrofit. Now place it inside the app level Gradle file. Okay, so now we need to add dependency for using MPAndroidChart library. So open your browser, go to the GitHub page of MPAndroidChart. Okay, here is the dependency. So before going to add this dependency, we need to add the Maven repository in your project level Gradle file. So copy this line. Now go to Android Studio. Open project level Gradle file. Within the all projects section, add the Maven repository. Now we can add the dependency for using that library. So copy this line. Now place it inside the dependency section of module level Gradle script file. Now sync project. Okay, here the project sync finishes successfully. So first here I am going to add a data class. Open Java folder, right click the package and create a new Java class. I name it as growth. Now here I am going to add some variables. First one is an integer, it is here. Second one is a float value. It is the growth rate. Okay, so now for proper mapping we have to find the properties of the JSON object. So here the properties is year and growth rate. So now for proper mapping we have to specify the serialized name annotation, and for the second variable it is growth rate. Okay, now we need the getter methods for these two variables. So add the getter methods. Okay, so this is the data class. So now we can configure the retrofit. First I'm going to create a class that return an instance of retrofit. I name it as API client. Now create variables for base URL. So here I use the IP 10.0.2.2 because we are going to test this project on an Android virtual device. Okay, now specify a variable for retrofit. Now create a method that return an instance of retrofit. Now first check whether retrofit is null or not. If it is null, we have to initialize that variable. So retrofit equal to new retrofit builder. Base URL, specify the base URL. Now specify the converter factory. Here we are going to use the JSON converter factory. And finally call the build method. And finally return retrofit from this method. Okay, so now we can create the interface for retrofit. I name it as API interface. It is an interface. Now specify an appropriate method for the network call. So here the returned IP is a list of objects of the growth class, and here I name the method as getGrowthInfo. Now specify the API endpoint. Here it is getGrowthInfo.php. Okay. So now here I'm going to use a fragment for display the chart. So create a new fragment, select a blank fragment. I name it as chart fragment. So here the fragment is created. First we can specify the layout. So here the root element is a frame layout. There is no need of this text view. So first I modify the root element into a relative layout. So now here I am going to add the bar chart and pie chart. Specify the width and height into match parent. Now specify an ID for it. Specify layout margin to 10 dp. Now specify an ID for it. And I specify the visibility into gone. Now I specify the pie chart. Width is match parent, height also match parent. Specify the margin into 10 dp. Now specify ID for it. It is pie chart. Here also set the visibility into gone. Okay. So now we can code it inside the fragment class file. First here create some variable for view class and return that view object from this method. Okay, so now we can create variables for bar chart and pie chart. Here I name it as m bar chart. Now create a variable for pie chart. Here I name it as m pie chart. Okay, now we can initialize those variables using the view object. Now initialize the pie chart. Okay, so now here I'm going to create a separate method for get information from server. Here I name it as get growth info growth chart with one parameter method. So the method indicate whether it is pie chart or bar chart. So we call that method from the onCreateView method. We get the arguments of fragment. It is the method whether it is pie or bar chart. So now we can get the information from server. So here the response is a list of object. API client.get API client API interface.class. Now call that method get growth info. Now we can implement the callback methods. So we can get the response within this method called onResponse. So here we have to check two conditions, whether the user need a bar chart. First we have to check whether the response body is null. If it is not null, we have to check whether the user need a bar chart or a pie chart. Now the second condition, if it is a pie chart. Okay, so for displaying a bar chart we need three objects. First one is bar entries. The bar entries contain the list of x and y coordinates. And second one is a bar data set. We can set some properties of the chart using the bar data set. And finally, we need an object of bar data. So these are the three objects need for creating a chart. The same in the case of pie chart also. Okay, so first we can create some list variable. This list contain an objects of bar entries. So an array list. Now here I start some for each loop. Now add each information into the bar entries. So here the first parameter is the x coordinate, it is here, and second parameter is the growth rate. Okay, so now we need to create some variables for bar data set. New bar data set. Here you need to pass two parameters, bar entries and description for the legend. Now we can set colors. So here we need separate color for each bar. So here I use colorful.colors. Now create some variables for bar data and pass the bar data set. Now specify the width for the bar using the parameter set bar width. Here I use 0.9f. Now we can display the chart, so specify the visibility into visible. Now we need some animation. We need animation in y-axis, so animate y, specify the milliseconds. Here we need 5000 milliseconds. Now set the data using set data method. Now here I specify another method, set fit bars into true. Now we need a description for the chart, so create an object of the description class. Now specify the description. Description is growth rate per year. Okay, now add the description to the chart by calling the set description method, and finally call the invalidate method. This will refresh the chart. Okay, so now we can display, now we can configure the pie chart. Here also the same thing. First create some list that contain objects of pie entry. So now we can add the x and y coordinates to the pie entry. So here the first parameter is the growth rate. The first parameter is the data value. It is growth rate, and second parameter is the data descriptor. Here it is year. So the second parameter must be a string value. That's why I convert that one into string variable. So now create some variables. First specify the visibility into visible. Now here we have to animate in x and y direction. So specify animation in x and y direction in milliseconds. Now create some variables for pie dataset. Here you need to pass two parameters, the pie entries, and second parameter is the description of legend. Okay, so now set colors. Here also we need different colors for each dataset. Now create an object of pie data. Pass the pie dataset as parameter. Now set the data on the chart using set data method and pass the pie data. Now specify description for the chart. So create an object of description class. Now specify the description text using set text method. Here the description is growth rate per year. Now set the description. Now refresh the chart using invalidate method. Okay, so now the chart is ready. So now I'm going to create an activity for hosting this fragment. So create a separate activity. Here I name it as chart activity. First specify container for the fragment in the activity layout. First change the root element into relative layout. This is the container for the fragment with ID fragment container. Okay. So now we can load the fragment according to the user requirements. So first create some variables called method. Get the method from the indent. Create an object of the fragment. Now add the method into the fragment by using the set arguments method. Here the argument is a bundle object. So set arguments and pass the bundle object. Now we can perform the fragment transaction. Add the fragment to the container. Pass the fragment object and commit the transaction. Okay, so now we can code in main activity. So open activity main.xml. So here I am going to place two buttons for loading bar chart and pie chart. So add two buttons. Change the ID into BN bars. Specify an on-click method. Open bar chart. Change the text into open bar chart. Okay. Now add another button for display the pie chart. Here I specify the name as BN ID as BN pie chart. Now specify the text on it. Open pie chart. Now specify the on-click method. Open pie chart. Okay. Now add these methods inside the class file. Now add the second method. Okay. So from these two methods we have to start the newly created activity. So create an intent object. So here this chart activity dot class. Now we have to add the string, the method, whether it is bar or pie chart. So in this case this is bars, and now start the activity. So the same thing in the case of pie chart, but here the method is pie. Okay, so now we can test it. So I run the project. Okay, now the project available on this virtual device. So first we can test the bar chart. So now the chart appear. Here we have animation in Y direction only. Okay, now we can analyze the data. So this is the response from our server. So now we can compare the chart with the data from server. So here the x-axis contain years, y-axis is the growth rate. In 2017 it is 55.7, the data is correct, and for 2016 it is 41.2. yeah, the data is correct. So now we can check the pie chart. So in the case of pie chart we have animation in both x and y directions. So now we can analyze the data set. So in 2011 we have 15.7, the data is correct, and here is the legend that represents years, and this is the description of the chart. So this is how we display bar chart and pie chart using MPAndroidChart library. I hope you understand the concept. For getting more Android tutorial, please subscribe this channel now. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.